Hello and welcome. The Lich stands as perhaps the most terrifying achievement of arcane ambition. A spellcaster who has willingly crossed the threshold of death to emerge on the other side as something neither living nor truly dead. You might wonder what drives a mortal to seek such a transformation, to trade breath and heartbeat for eternal consciousness wrapped in decay. The answer, based on what we know from those who have studied these beings, lies not in simple evil, but in the hunger for knowledge that outlasts a single lifetime, the refusal to let death steal away decades or centuries of accumulated wisdom. The Lich represents the ultimate expression of arcane scholarship taken to its most extreme conclusion, where the preservation of the mind becomes paramount above all else, even at the cost of the flesh that once housed it. Before we descend into the knowledge, please consider subscribing to the channel. It is the surest way to find your path back to our library of lore when you wake. Section 1. The Nature and Origins of Lichdom. To understand the Lich, you must first grasp what lichdom truly means. The transformation is not a simple spell or potion. It requires preparation that spans years or even decades, gathering components so rare that entire adventuring careers have been dedicated to finding just one. The prospective Lich must craft or obtain a phylactery, an object of extraordinary magical potency that will house the essence of their soul. This phylactery can take many forms. Some choose gemstones of flawless clarity. Others prefer crowns or amulets, while still others select items of personal significance: a ring worn since apprenticeship, a staff that channeled their first spell, or even a simple box decorated with arcane sigils. The form matters less than the enchantment woven into it. Magic so powerful it can trap and preserve a soul across the ages. The phylactery must be prepared through rituals that themselves border on the forbidden. The wizard inscribes it with spells of binding and preservation, weaving protective enchantments that will guard it against destruction. They pour their own magical essence into the object, creating a connection between self and container that will become absolute upon transformation. This process alone requires spells of at least 8th level, magic that only the most accomplished archmages can command. Creation of the phylactery takes at least a 10-day to achieve, and only after it is complete can the Lich commence the deadly ritual to fully achieve lichdom. Once the phylactery stands ready, the true horror begins. The transformation ritual itself varies between different traditions and schools of necromantic study, but all share common elements of darkness and sacrifice. The wizard must brew a potion known in some texts as the Lichni potion, a concoction so vile that its ingredients remain whispered only in the most depraved circles of necromancy. The exact components vary between traditions, though accounts mention substances that would horrify civilized society. Some recipes, based on what scholars have pieced together from fragmented texts, call for poison extracted from specific planes of existence, the liquefied essence of trapped souls, and components harvested from creatures that exist between life and death. The wizard drinks this potion, knowing full well what comes next. Death, not metaphorical death or symbolic passage, but true mortality claiming the body. The poison courses through veins, stopping the heart, silencing breath, and extinguishing the spark of life. For a moment, the wizard dies completely, experiencing the absolute void that awaits all mortal creatures. But the phylactery acts as an anchor, a chain that pulls the soul back from whatever lies beyond, drawing it into the prepared vessel where it waits, trapped and aware. The experience of being shunted into the phylactery proves exhausting, causing a loss of life force and might, as well as erasure of the wizard's most powerful prepared spells. The body, meanwhile, begins its own transformation. Necromantic energy floods through dead tissue, reanimating it, but not restoring it to life. The flesh withers, drawing tight against bone. Eyes that once sparkled with curiosity or determination become points of cold fire, burning with unholy animation. The skin takes on a parchment quality, yellowing and thinning until the skull beneath shows through. Hair falls away or becomes brittle and lifeless. The hands that once gestured dramatically during debates over magical theory become skeletal claws, still capable of the intricate motions required for spellcasting, but stripped of all warmth and humanity. Yet consciousness persists. The mind awakens in this transformed state, finding itself housed in a body that no longer breathes, no longer hungers in the traditional sense, no longer ages. The newly risen Lich experiences existence through senses fundamentally altered. They perceive the flow of magical energy more clearly than any living wizard could, seeing the weave of reality itself as a tapestry of potential and power. They feel the pull of their phylactery, an ever-present awareness of where their true essence resides. They know with absolute certainty that destroying their body means nothing, that their soul will reconstruct a new form over the course of days, emerging once more from the phylactery to continue their eternal existence. This immortality comes with specific mechanics that bind the Lich to their phylactery. If their physical form suffers destruction through combat or mishap, or the rare successful assassination attempt, the Lich's consciousness retreats into the phylactery. There, protected by whatever wards and guardians they established, the soul begins the process of regeneration. The phylactery draws upon ambient magical energy, slowly constructing a new body identical to the previous one. Only the destruction of the phylactery itself can truly end a Lich's existence, and phylacteries are notoriously difficult to destroy, often requiring specific conditions or unique weapons. However, maintaining this undead state requires ongoing effort. According to some traditions, a lich must feed souls to their phylactery regularly to sustain the magic preserving their body and consciousness. This grim requirement means the lich cannot simply retreat into isolation, but must periodically capture and sacrifice sentient beings, trapping their souls within the phylactery, where they are consumed and destroyed utterly. If a lich fails or forgets to maintain their body with sacrificed souls, they begin to physically fall apart, potentially going insane and eventually degenerating into a demi-lich. The origins of lichdom stretch back through history to times when the boundaries between life and death first became subjects of magical study. The earliest liches, based on surviving records, emerged during the height of ancient civilizations, when archmages pushed the boundaries of what magic could accomplish. In Faerun, the practice of lichdom predates many of the current nations, with prominent examples appearing during the Age of Netheril, the magical empire whose archwizards achieved heights never since matched. Netherese archwizards pursued immortality through various means, and lichdom represented one of several paths they explored. The fall of Netheril in negative 339 Dale reckoning scattered these undead sorcerers across Faerun, and many survive to the present day, ancient beyond mortal reckoning. Other worlds developed their own traditions of lichdom independently. In Eberron, during the conflicts that shaped the continent of Corvair necromantic research in the nation of Karnaf, produced undead warriors who served military purposes. The blood of Val faith, which teaches that divinity lies within mortal beings rather than gods, has connections to these practices, though the specifics of their relationship with traditional lichdom remain subjects of scholarly debate. The faith is known for its use of undead in Karnaf's armies, particularly during the last war, and for transforming certain individuals into vampiric guardians. The phylactery's nature deserves deeper examination, for it represents both the lich's greatest strength and most critical vulnerability. The object must be something substantial enough to contain a soul, yet mundane enough in appearance that it might escape notice among other treasures. Many liches hide their phylacteries in elaborate dungeons or pocket dimensions, protecting them with layers of guardians, traps, and magical wards. Others employ more subtle tactics, placing the phylactery in plain sight disguised as an ordinary object, or even giving it to an unsuspecting ally who would never imagine the true nature of the gift they carry. The phylactery radiates powerful magic, detectable through various divination spells, which necessitates additional protection. Liches typically employ lead lining, anti-magic fields, or misdirection enchantments to mask the phylactery's aura. Some place false phylacteries in obvious locations, hoping that would-be destroyers will waste their efforts on decoys, while the true vessel remains hidden elsewhere. The paranoia surrounding phylactery protection, this could imply, grows as the Lich ages, with centuries of existence teaching them to trust nothing and no one with their ultimate secret. The moment of death and rebirth as a Lich marks a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. Liches occasionally express, in unguarded moments, according to those who have documented encounters, the alienation they feel from their former existence. The memories of being alive remain, but the emotional connections fade. Food tastes like ash if they attempt to eat. Music sounds hollow. The warmth of sunlight on skin becomes merely another sensory input without pleasure attached. What drives them forward becomes intellectual rather than emotional. The pursuit of knowledge as an abstract goal rather than something felt with passion. This emotional blunting, based on observed patterns, represents part of the price of immortality, the gradual erosion of what made the wizard human in favor of pure, cold intellect. Yet despite this cost, wizards continue to seek lichdom generation after generation. The promise of unlimited time to pursue magical research proves too tempting for certain personalities to resist. A wizard who has spent their entire life studying a single school of magic or a particular phenomenon looks upon their mortality and sees only waste, all that accumulated knowledge destined to vanish when their heart stops. Lichdom offers an alternative, a way to continue their research indefinitely, to see projects through that would require centuries to complete, to achieve understanding that no mortal lifetime could encompass. The preparation for lichdom often begins decades before the actual transformation. A wizard who has decided upon this path starts accumulating the necessary components, researching the specific rituals required, and establishing the location where they will place their phylactery. They create contingency plans for their undead existence, establishing hidden sanctuaries, stockpiling spell components that might become scarce, and gradually withdrawing from mortal society to avoid questions about their eventual disappearance. Some fake their own deaths through mundane means, allowing their mortal identity to pass into history while they prepare for their transformation in secret. Section 2. The Great Liches of History. Among all those who have achieved lichdom throughout the ages, certain names echo through history with particular resonance. Their accomplishments and atrocities so profound that even gods take notice. You find yourself drawn to their stories, not as simple tales of villainy, but as complex chronicles of beings who pursued knowledge and power beyond all mortal limits. These are the architects of eternal dread, the keepers of secrets that nations have crumbled trying to obtain. the undead sorcerers, whose very names serve as warnings whispered to apprentice wizards about the dangers of excessive ambition. Vecna stands as perhaps the most infamous lich in all the multiverse, a being whose transformation from mortal wizard to undead archlich to actual deity spans thousands of years and crosses multiple planes of existence. His origins trace back to the world of Oath, where he began as a mortal human in an age so distant that accurate records have long since turned to dust. Even as a living wizard, Vecna demonstrated power that few could match, gathering followers and establishing an empire through a combination of arcane might and cunning political manipulation. His hunger for knowledge became legendary, and no secret seemed too dark, no price too high if it meant expanding his understanding of magic and reality itself. The transformation into lichdom marked merely one step in Vecna's ascension. He achieved undeath through methods that remain subjects of study, though the specifics have been lost or deliberately hidden across the ages. His phylactery's nature remains unknown, hidden so thoroughly that even after his physical destruction multiple times throughout history, its location has never been confirmed. His pursuit of knowledge took forms both methodical and monstrous. He established vast libraries in his strongholds, collecting not just spell books and scrolls, but also the actual memories and souls of beings he encountered. His servant, a vampire named Cass, who wielded a sentient sword of terrible power, helped him expand his empire. The empire Vecna built through conquest demonstrated both his magical prowess and his absolute ruthlessness. One tale speaks of a city whose leaders begged for mercy after Vecna's forces besieged them, offering wealth and eventually their lives in exchange for their citizens. Vecna turned one of them and the man's family over to his lieutenant Cass the Bloody-Handed, who spent a day torturing and killing them, then had all within the city slaughtered and their heads mounted on pikes. This pattern of conquest and cruelty marked Vecna's rule across his territories. The most famous event in Vecna's mortal existence came at the height of his empire when he was betrayed by Cass. According to the accounts that have survived, Vecna had accumulated enough collective power and magic to achieve apotheosis by means of a ritual in his rotted tower. However, Cass interrupted the ritual and attacked his master. The sword itself, it is said, whispered to Cass, convincing him to slay his master and usurp his power. The two engaged in a tremendous battle. In the end, Vecna gained the upper hand. But just as the Lich moved to slay his former servant, Cass cut off his hand and plunged his sword into Vecna's left eye. A massive explosion destroyed the tower and shook the surrounding lands, and both were flung from the prime material plane. The battle cost Vecna his left hand and eye, while Cass was hurled across the multiverse to the quasi-elemental plane of ash. The artifacts that survived tell their own dark tale. Vecna's hand and eye became objects of immense power that retained fragments of his consciousness and abilities. Throughout the ages, these relics have surfaced repeatedly, tempting mortals with the power they offer while slowly corrupting their wielders. The Eye of Vecna grants supernatural sight and arcane knowledge, while the Hand of Vecna bestows devastating magical abilities. Yet both demand terrible prices. Using either one requires the removal of the corresponding body part to affix the artifact in its place. Once attached, they cannot be removed without killing the wearer. The fragments of Vecna's will left within each one turn the wearer toward evil, while corrupting and decaying their body. The bearer gradually comes to believe they are Vecna himself. Like many powerful artifacts, others who see the hand or eye begin to covet it, making them risky to possess. Finally, the powers of the hand and eye always fail their wielder at the moment of their doom. Vecna's eventual ascension to godhood represents an unprecedented achievement. After a failed attempt to ascend to full deity status led to his banishment to Cavicius in the domains of dread, Vecna organized a centuries-long plot. This plan culminated in his absorbing the essence of the demigod Eos and invading Sigil, the city of doors, from where he could exert control over the entire multiverse. Vecna became the only deity in existence that successfully breached Sigil's defenses, causing a great disturbance in the multiverse. He was thwarted by adventurers and expelled from Sigil with assistance from the Lady of Pain, but managed to retain the power of a lesser deity. Following Vecna's defeat, the Lady of Pain strengthened Sigil's defenses and reorganized the planar structure to repair the damage and prevent such an event from ever happening again. Even as a god, Vecna maintains the essential character of the Lich he once was, hoarding secrets and dispensing knowledge only in exchange for service or sacrifice. Asururak presents a different archetype of lichdom, the undead sorcerer as architect of doom, where Vecna built an empire and eventually godhood. Asururak focused his immortal existence on creating the most elaborate and deadly dungeon complexes ever conceived. His masterwork, the Tomb of Horrors, stands as perhaps the most infamous dungeon in all fantasy gaming, a testament to both his magical genius and his profound contempt for adventurers who would seek his treasures. The tomb exemplifies Asururak's philosophy that knowledge and power should be protected by tests so deadly that only the truly worthy or truly foolish would dare attempt them. Asururak's path to lichdom began when he entered the service of the demon Prince Orcus. Taking advantage of his authority in that being's cult, he ordered the construction of vast crypts, including at the site which would later become the Tomb of Horrors. After pursuing numerous avenues of research to extend his lifespan, an aging Sorcerer finally settled on lichdom. Once he achieved his goal, Sorcerer abandoned his fealty to Orcus, suggesting a pragmatic approach to alliances that characterized his subsequent existence. The construction of the Tomb of Horrors itself reveals much about Sorcerer's methods and mindset. Over the centuries, as his power began to wane, as all liches eventually experience, rather than simply feed souls to his phylactery or seek out new sources of power through conventional means, he delved into a period of research. He ordered his servants to spend the next 80 years building the deadly Tomb of Horrors beneath the hills where he held court. Every corridor holds potential death. Every treasure comes with a trap. The very architecture functions as a weapon, with false passages, illusory walls, and rooms designed to separate and destroy adventuring parties. Through cunning application of magical and mundane hazards. Upon the tomb's completion, Sorcerer had all of his slaves killed, ensuring no one living knew its full layout or secrets. At the heart of the tomb lies Sorcerer's skull, transformed beyond standard lichdom into a state known as demi-lich. Retreating to within his tomb, Sorcerer willingly failed to maintain the soul energy necessary to retain his physical state, and degraded to a pile of lich dust and a single gem-encrusted skull. As a demi-lich, Sorcerer appears as a human skull inlaid with precious gemstones. 2 rubies, each worth 50,000 gold pieces, are placed in its eyes, and 6 marquee-cut diamonds, each worth 5,000 gold pieces, are set as teeth in its jaw. This new form still allowed him to project his spirit throughout the multiverse, where he carried on an epic campaign of exploring multiple worlds, establishing deadly dungeons, and acquiring artifacts. The primary goal of these dungeons was to absorb the souls of powerful adventurers to feed his phylactery. The demi-lich skull possesses devastating powers. When activated, it can devour souls with its attacks. If a target fails its saving throw, and there is at least 1 unoccupied soul gem on the demi-lich's skull, the target dies instantly, and its soul is trapped in a soul gem on the skull, visible as a tiny creature-shaped mote of light. While its soul is trapped, a creature cannot be restored to life by any means. A soul that remains in a soul gem for 30 days is destroyed forever. Each captured soul becomes a trophy, a testament to Sorcerer's superiority over those who challenged him. Sorcerer's activities extended far beyond his original tomb. Around 100 years ago, Sorcerer's quest led him to the forbidden city of Amu in Chult, on the world of Toril, whose priests were routinely killed in a series of death traps to appease their 9 trickster gods. Impressed by this culture of deadly trials, Asurak killed all 9 gods, enslaved the people, and forced them to build a dungeon beneath the cliffs called the Tomb of the 9 Gods. Asurak then slaughtered all of his slaves by using them to test the deadliness of his dungeon, turned a few into undead and flesh golems, and continued on his way. He later placed an artifact called the Soulmonger in this tomb, which captured the souls of the dead from across Faerun and fed them to an atropal, the remnants of a stillborn godling he discovered in the negative plane. To maintain his original tomb, Asurak employed armies of ethereal demons to replace slain monsters, reset disabled traps, and restore missing treasure to varying degrees of accuracy. He intentionally allowed rumors of the location of his original tomb to spread, resulting in a wave of brave adventurers attempting to brave the deadly tomb of horrors. This suggests a certain enjoyment of the game, the intellectual satisfaction of watching varied attempts to overcome his creations. Larlock represents another approach to eternal existence, the Lich as hidden ruler and master manipulator. Called the Shadow King, Larlock was a Netherese male human who became one of the most powerful liches in Faerun's history. In time, he rose to become Sorcerer King of the enclave of Jixadur in ancient Netheril. At some point during his rule, he fashioned the Death Moon Orb, a powerful artifact that allowed him to charm and mentally control the members of his court, to spy on his enemies and learn their plans, and to summon powerful fiends from the outer planes. It served him successfully, and Larlock ruled for many years, gaining great power. In time, he underwent transformation into a Lich. Larlock survived the fall of Netheril in -339 Dale, reckoning through careful preparation and foresight. Where other Netherese archwizards perished or fell into stasis, Larlock maintained active presence throughout the subsequent millennia. He became master of the Warlock's Crypt, a name that is actually a corruption of Larlock's own name, and Shadow King of its undead inhabitants. The Warlock's Crypt serves as headquarters for his domain, though unlike Vecna's overt empire or Asurak's tomb complexes, Larlock's influence operates through layers of secrecy and misdirection. As the Shadow King of Warlock's Crypt, Larlock commanded an army of undead creatures to serve and protect him. Among them was a small army of liches, numbering at least 60 by 1374 Dale reckoning. Many were also survivors of Netheril, including Rajalath. Their loyalty was absolute, ensured by some force of magic. Occasionally, he granted some of these liches their freedom, just to see what they would do, suggesting both confidence in his power and a certain intellectual curiosity about the behavior of his former servants. Larlock possessed incredible power and was a super-intelligent genius. Over 2,000 years, he composed perfect plans to deal with nearly every possible situation. And even for things he was not prepared for, he could come up with an almost perfect response in moments. He was one of the oldest non-draconic beings in Faerun, and one of the most powerful mages. As a Netherese arcanist king who ruled over his flying city for centuries, he possessed knowledge of magical principles that the fall of Netheril nearly erased from the world. This accumulated understanding granted him advantages that even other ancient liches might lack. Shas Tam of Thay presents perhaps the most politically successful lich in current Faerun history, having risen to become the de facto ruler of an entire nation. His story demonstrates how lichdom can serve as a tool for conventional political ambition rather than purely arcane pursuits. Thay's culture, which values magical power above all other considerations, created ideal conditions for Shas Tam's rise. The nation's ruling council of Zulkirs, each leading one of 8 schools of magic, held absolute authority over Thayan territory and population. Shas Tam began as Zulkir of Necromancy, a position of significant power but not supreme authority. His transformation into a lich came relatively early in his political career, granting him the time and immortality needed to outmaneuver rival Zulkirs who aged and died, while he continued accumulating power and allies. The process through which Shas Tam seized control of Thay demonstrates the strategic patience only an immortal could execute. In 1362 Dale Reckoning, the Zulkir of Alteration Maligar attempted to seize power from the rest of the council. His efforts were thwarted by a surprising alliance between Shas Tam and agents of the Harpers. This established Shas Tam as a defender of the council structure, even as he plotted its eventual overthrow. Less than a decade later, in 1375 Dale Reckoning, Shas Tam plunged Thay into a civil war when he began a coup against his fellow Zulkirs. The Red Wizards were divided into 2 separate factions and fought each other in a war that lasted 10 years. To defeat his foes, Tam harnessed the devastation of the spell plague to gain godlike powers and ravage the landscape of Thay. The spell plague, a catastrophic magical disruption that reshaped Faerun's landscape and altered fundamental rules of magic itself, provided the chaos Shas Tam needed. He was able to harness the power of the spell plague, bringing him one step closer to becoming a god. This made it relatively easy to install himself as ruler, removing the other Zulkirs from power, whether they wanted to step down or not, and installing his undead sycophants in those positions of power. A great blow came to Shas Tam in 1478 Dale Reckoning, as the exiled Zulkirs interrupted his grand scheme to become a being of godlike power. The Zulkirs rallied what allies they had and prevented the completion of Tam's ultimate end, the ritual of the unmaking. Their efforts cost them their lives, but likely saved Faerun from one of the greatest threats it might have ever faced, and prevented Shas Tam from ever attempting the ritual on Thayan's soil. Despite this setback, Shas Tam remained ruler of Thay, his control maintained through undead armies and the loyalty of those red wizards who serve him. Under Shas Tam's rule, Thay became even more necrocratic, with undead comprising significant portions of the military and labor force. His policies reflect the perspective of a Lich ruler, one who sees undead servants as more reliable and efficient than living workers. This created an eerie quality to Thayan cities, where skeletal laborers perform tasks alongside living citizens, and zombies serve as guards and soldiers. Beyond these famous names, other liches have left their marks on various campaign settings and historical periods. The cult of the dragon in Faerun, though focused primarily on converting living dragons into dracoliches, has been led by various undead sorcerers over its centuries of existence. Following the destruction of its founder Samaster in 1374 Dale Reckoning, the cult fell under the rule of a triumvirate comprising two dracoliches, Auglorosa the Sibilant Shade and Dogothoth the Creeping Doom, as well as a Lagshan Natra, a priest of Bane who was secretly also a humanoid lich. Around 1479 Dale Reckoning, the rune-scribed dracolich Anabraxas, the Black Talon, was revered and respected as the organization's highest authority. The organization's persistence, despite repeated efforts to destroy it, testifies to the advantages lichdom provides for long-term planning and survival. The common thread connecting all these undead sorcerers, regardless of their individual goals and methods, remains the relationship between immortality and knowledge. Each uses their unlimited time to pursue understanding that mortal lifespans cannot accommodate. Vecna seeks all secrets. Asururak perfects the art of magical trap-making and soul harvesting. Larlock accumulates historical knowledge and maintains ancient Netherese magic. Shas Tam masters the governance of nations across centuries. Their methods differ, their specific interests vary, but the fundamental drive remains constant. The refusal to let death interrupt their work, whatever that work might be. Section 3. The pursuit of knowledge and their collections. The libraries these undead sorcerers maintain transcend anything mortal institutions could achieve, not merely in age, but in the nature of what they preserve. You walk conceptually through these repositories of forbidden wisdom, past shelves that stretch beyond sight, containing volumes bound in materials that would horrify civilized scholars. Here rest the accumulated secrets of millennia, organized according to systems that only immortal minds could devise or navigate. The very air carries weight, thick with preservation spells that have maintained parchment and ink across centuries, that saw empires rise and crumble into legend. Understanding what liches collect requires examining their fundamental relationship with knowledge itself. Liches often devoted their unnaturally long existences to the pursuit of arcane and uncanny secrets, making them masters of otherwise unfathomable topics like godhood, the multiverse, mortality, and beyond. They were avid collectors of arcane treasures, secrets, and tools, including magic items, potions, spell scrolls, spellbooks, staves, and wands. They used these items extensively and would design devious traps meant to ensnare adventurers in order to add their victims' magic items to their own collection. Unlike mortal scholars who specialize or focus their research within manageable boundaries, liches accumulate broadly across all fields that interest them. A single lich's library might contain treatises on necromantic theory, adjacent to agricultural manuals from civilizations dead 3,000 years, followed by philosophical texts debating the nature of consciousness, then technical specifications for constructing magical items. The magical tomes represent perhaps the most obvious category of collected works. Spellbooks from archmages across the ages fill entire wings of lich libraries, each containing carefully transcribed formulas for casting magic. Some date back to eras when spell notation differed fundamentally from modern conventions, requiring translation and interpretation that only someone who lived through those periods could provide accurately. The ancient Netherese learned magic from the Nether Scrolls, which were actually scrolls called the golden skins of the world serpent, dating back tens of thousands of years and containing fundamental magic theory. Netherese mages also struck out, attacking other nations and stripping away arcane spells from their sorcerers. Liches who survived from that era possessed spellbooks, documenting magical practices now lost to current civilizations. Owing to the great depths of time they had to research and practice their magic, it was not uncommon for a lich to wield potent, unique spells of their own devising. These experimental spells, developed over centuries of magical research, represent knowledge found nowhere else. The research notes and experimental logs that accompany these unique spells reveal the development process behind finished magical formulas, offering insight into how great mages thought and worked. A lich studying these notes can avoid mistakes that cost their predecessors years of wasted effort, building upon accumulated wisdom rather than rediscovering principles through trial and error. The category of forbidden tomes deserves special attention, for liches actively seek out and preserve books that other civilizations have tried to destroy. The Book of Vile Darkness stands as perhaps the most notorious example. Most believe the Lich god Vecna authored this foul manuscript. He recorded in its pages every horrid idea, every corrupt thought, and every example of foul magic he came across or devised. The contents of this manuscript are described as the meat and drink of the wicked, containing knowledge so horrid that to even glimpse the scrawled pages invites doom. The book grants its attuned wielder access to powerful spells and beneficial properties, but also carries detrimental properties that reflect its evil nature. Some versions contain formulas for transitioning into a lich or other forms of undead. The Tome of the Stilled Tongue represents another category of forbidden knowledge. This thick leather-bound volume has a desiccated tongue pinned to the front cover. 5 of these tomes exist, and it remains unknown which one is the original. The grisly cover decoration on the first tome of the Stilled Tongue once belonged to a treacherous former servant of the Lich god Vecna. The tongues pinned to the covers of the 4 copies came from other spellcasters who crossed Vecna. Each copy contained a variety of wizard spells, instructions for creating a lich's phylactery, and eldritch mental exercises. Vecna watches anyone using this tome and can write cryptic messages in the book that appear at midnight and fade away after they are read. The Demonomicon of Igwilv represents forbidden knowledge of a different sort. This unique spellbook contains the most complete collection of demon lore in the known multiverse. It was a comprehensive treatise on demonic lore that contained information about several demon lords, complete with instructions for summoning and binding them. Igwilv, a witch queen who consorted with demon lords, compiled this knowledge across her long existence. The book exists in multiple volumes, and Igwilv used the complete Demonomicon to wield power over at least a dozen demon lords. A 7th copy is held by the Varangoin Liches, who guard the Well of Ahazu. Merely possessing the Demonomicon is sufficient to cast many of the spells contained within, functioning in the manner of a magical staff. However, the book carries significant dangers. Each copy is protected by demonic guardians, one who guards its location, and a second who stalks the bearer if the first fails. The Demonomicon is so highly valued that its bearer will be targeted by fiends and demonologists from across the plains, eager to claim its power for their own. Like many artifacts, it has other detrimental properties which are not widely known. Liches who maintain copies take precautions, storing such books in lead-lined containers with multiple magical wards, retrieving them only when specific information becomes necessary. Historical records comprise another vast category within Lich libraries, where mortal historians must rely on surviving documents and archaeological evidence. Liches can maintain primary sources across the full span of their existence. A lich who lived through the fall of Netheril might possess contemporary accounts of those events, written by witnesses or the lich themselves, offering perspectives unavailable through later historical reconstruction. These personal chronicles document not just major events, but daily life details that rarely survive in conventional historical records. The economic conditions, social customs, technological knowledge, and cultural attitudes of vanished civilizations. Maps form a particularly valuable subset of historical documentation. Political boundaries shift constantly throughout mortal timescales, with nations rising and falling, cities being built and abandoned, trade routes changing as new territories open or old ones become impassable. A lich's map collection might span 5,000 years, showing the same geographical region under dozens of different political configurations. This cartographic knowledge has practical applications beyond historical interest, revealing locations of forgotten ruins, abandoned mines, or sealed dungeons that surface maps no longer indicate. Treasures lost when cities fell or kingdoms collapsed can be relocated through careful comparison of historical and current maps. Magical research extends beyond spell development into fundamental investigations of reality's nature. Liches conduct experiments that require decades or centuries to complete, testing hypotheses about planar mechanics, the structure of magic itself, or the relationship between matter and energy. Their laboratories contain equipment and materials gathered from across planes of existence, including items that exist nowhere in standard reality. These experiments often produce results that push magical boundaries beyond what living wizards attempt, exploring questions that require timescales only immortal beings can accommodate. Artifact collections represent another dimension of lich hoarding. Magical items of extraordinary power, objects whose creation required techniques now lost or resources no longer available, accumulate in undead treasuries. Some liches specialize in specific categories of artifacts. One might collect all available rings of power. Another focuses on staffs wielded by famous archmages throughout history, while a third gathers weapons that played pivotal roles in legendary battles. Each artifact comes with its own history and properties, information the lich carefully documents and preserves alongside the physical object. Certain artifacts exist in limited quantities or as unique items, making their acquisition competitive among liches. When two undead sorcerers both desire the same artifact, conflicts can erupt that span decades. With elaborate schemes, proxy battles fought through hired agents, and careful maneuvering to avoid direct confrontation that might destroy the prize they both seek. These contests of acquisition demonstrate Lich psychology at its most calculating, immortal beings, playing extended games where patience and careful planning matter more than immediate action. The preservation of living knowledge represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lich collections. Rather than relying solely on written records, some Liches capture and maintain actual individuals who possess unique expertise. A craftsman who mastered a particular technique, kept alive through magic and coercion to continue producing his specialized work. A priest who achieved direct communion with their deity, imprisoned and periodically questioned about the nature of divine contact. A philosopher who developed revolutionary theories, held captive to continue their thinking under the Lich's direction and observation. These living prisoners exist as extensions of the library itself, reference materials who happen to remain conscious and aware of their captivity. Memory extraction techniques could allow Liches to harvest knowledge directly from minds, rather than relying on subjects to communicate through language. The spell Modify Memory enables a caster to reach into a subject's mind and modify their memories in various ways, including implanting memories of events the subject never experienced. While this spell primarily serves to alter existing memories, the underlying principles suggest that extracting and storing memories might be possible through more advanced applications of similar magic. This collected experience could span everything from technical skills to emotional states, allowing the Lich to understand subjects without directly experiencing them in their current undead state. The organization systems Liches develop for their collections reflect centuries of refinement and personal idiosyncrasy. Some employ magical cataloging systems where one merely thinks of a subject and relevant materials teleport to hand. Others maintain elaborate physical arrangements with complex filing systems that only they fully understand. Still others rely on construct servants or bound spirits who serve as living catalogs, entities who know the location of every item and can retrieve materials on command. The choice of system often reveals aspects of the Lich's personality and priorities. Security measures protecting these libraries incorporate both physical and magical defenses. Structural protections include hidden locations, pocket dimensions accessible only through specific keys or knowledge, and architecture designed to collapse and seal itself if breached. Magical wards detect unauthorized entry and respond with everything from simple alarms to lethal defensive spells. Guardian creatures, from undead servants to bound demons to magical constructs, patrol the stacks and challenge intruders. Some Liches employ even more elaborate protections, such as books that appear as desired, but contain cursed or false information, or entire false libraries that lead intruders away from the genuine collection. The relationship between liches and their libraries becomes deeply personal over centuries. The collection represents not just accumulated resources, but an extension of the lich's identity, a physical manifestation of their intellectual achievements and interests. Many liches spend vast amounts of time simply being in their libraries, reading and rereading texts, making connections between disparate works, or organizing and reorganizing materials according to new schemes. This private communion with accumulated knowledge, based on what we can observe of lich behavior, provides satisfaction that rivals any living pleasure they might remember. The pure intellectual engagement that justified their transformation into undeath in the first place. Exchange of knowledge between liches occurs rarely, but significantly. When two undead sorcerers negotiate information trades, the transactions involve careful evaluation of relative values and extensive verification processes. A copied spell book might trade for historical documents, or access to a particular section of one library might be granted in exchange for similar access elsewhere. These exchanges always involve safeguards against betrayal, magical contracts that enforce terms and punish violations. Trust remains essentially absent, but mutual self-interest enables cooperation when both parties benefit sufficiently from the trade. The question of what happens to lich libraries when their creator finally achieves true death through phylactery destruction generates considerable speculation. Some libraries likely contain contingency spells that activate upon the lich's demise, teleporting the collection to predetermined locations or destroying certain sensitive materials to prevent their capture. Others remain intact, becoming targets for adventurers, rival liches, or magical organizations seeking to claim the accumulated knowledge. Still others simply decay, as preservation spells fail without the lich's maintaining presence, returning ancient texts to dust and allowing magical energies to dissipate. Section 4. The price of immortality. The centuries pass with inexorable weight upon even undead flesh, and you witness the gradual transformation that lichdom imposes upon those who thought they had conquered mortality itself. The price of eternal existence reveals itself not in a single catastrophic moment, but through slow accumulation, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, as the body that once housed a living consciousness continues its journey away from anything recognizable as human. This deterioration follows predictable patterns documented across countless liches, a taxonomy of decay that serves as grim reminder that immortality does not mean unchanging, only unending. The physical transformation begins immediately upon achieving lichdom, but accelerates over time. That first decade sees the newly risen Lich adjusting to their altered state, learning to function in a body that no longer requires breath or sustenance, yet still maintains most structural integrity. The skin takes on that characteristic parchment quality, yellowing and thinning until bones show through clearly. Hair falls away or becomes brittle strands that break at the slightest touch. Eyes lose their natural moisture, becoming dry orbs that might retain color initially, but gradually shift toward the characteristic red or blue glow of undeath. The newly made Lich still appears roughly humanoid, recognizable as what they once were despite the obvious signs of their transformation. As centuries accumulate, the decay progresses with relentless patience. Typically, a Lich does decay, but slowly, though they are capable of healing and regeneration. The flesh itself begins sloughing away in places where mechanical stress proves too much for dead tissue to withstand. Fingers first, then hands, arms, feet, legs. Some liches attempt to maintain their physical forms through regular applications of preservative magic, or by periodically regenerating their bodies through phylactery reconstruction. Others accept the decay as inevitable, allowing it to progress while ensuring their magical capabilities remain intact regardless of physical deterioration. However, maintaining this undead state requires ongoing effort. A Lich must periodically feed souls to its phylactery to sustain the magic preserving its body and consciousness. The phylactery must consume souls regularly, though the exact frequency varies between traditions and individual liches. A creature imprisoned in the phylactery for 24 hours is consumed and destroyed utterly. This grim requirement means the Lich cannot simply retreat into isolation indefinitely, but must periodically capture and sacrifice sentient beings, trapping their souls within the phylactery where they are utterly destroyed. If a Lich fails or forgets to maintain its body with sacrificed souls, it begins to physically fall apart and might eventually become a demi-lich. The transformation from standard Lich to demi-lich represents lichdom's ultimate physical evolution, though not all liches pursue or achieve this state deliberately. The immortality granted to a Lich lasts only as long as it feeds mortal souls to its phylactery. If it falters or fails in that task, its bones turn to dust until only its skull remains. This demi-lich contains only a fragment of the Lich's malevolent life force, just enough so that if it is disturbed, these remains rise into the air and assume a wraith-like form. The demi-lich skull emits a terrifying howl that can slay the weak-hearted and leave others trembling with fear. Left alone, it sinks back down and returns to the empty peace of its existence. Few liches seek to become demi-liches, for it means an end to the existence they hoped to preserve by becoming undead. However, time can erode the lich's reason and memory, causing it to retreat into its ancient tomb and forget to feed on souls. The spells it once knew fade from its mind, and it no longer channels the arcane energy it wielded as a lich. However, even as a mere skull, it remains a deadly and vexing enemy. Even after a lich is reduced to a demi-lich state, its phylactery survives. As long as its phylactery is intact, the demi-lich cannot be permanently destroyed. Its skull reforms after 1 to 10 days, restoring the creature to its wretched state. If it has the presence of mind to do so, a demi-lich can reclaim its former power by feeding just one soul to its phylactery. Doing so restores the demi-lich to lich form, reconstituting its undead body. This enduring existence demonstrates that even in the most degraded state, the connection between phylactery and consciousness persists. Yet physical decay represents only the most visible price of lichdom. The mental and emotional deterioration proves perhaps more profound, though harder to observe from outside. The hallmark of a lich was that it had tethered its soul to the prime material plane, and as a result, most liches retained much of the personality and even emotions that they had in life, at least at first. However, countless years of undeath caused memories to fade and the mind to twist. Eventually, a lich lost all shreds of its humanity. The detachment from mortal concerns that begins immediately upon transformation deepens over time, as memories of living existence fade into abstract recollection rather than felt experience. They would probably start to find it difficult to sympathize with mortal beings, unable to feel any strong emotions toward them due to the fact that they are worthless compared to the immortality of a lich. A lich who has existed for 500 years remembers being alive the way you might remember a book you read long ago. The facts remain, but the emotional resonance has drained away. After 1,000 years, even those memories take on a dreamlike quality, possibly false or exaggerated, unreliable impressions from a state of being so foreign to current existence that accurate recall becomes impossible. This emotional blunting affects everything about how liches interact with the world. Relationships become transactional rather than meaningful. The lich might maintain long-term associations with living individuals or even other liches, but these connections lack the depth and warmth that characterize true friendship or love. Everything reduces to utility and intellectual interest. A lich keeps a particular person alive and protected because they serve useful purposes, not from affection. They engage with other beings because the interaction provides information or advances their goals, not from desire for companionship. The isolation becomes nearly absolute, even when surrounded by servants and visitors. The madness that affects some ancient liches manifests in various forms. from obsessive behaviors to complete disconnect from reality as other beings experience it. Being a lich condemns you to an inevitable decay of both body and mind, sort of like a magical form of deterioration, where your body eventually devolves into dust and gemstone-encrusted skull, and your mind degenerates into a semi-conscious state of hunger and malevolence. A lich who has existed for 3,000 years might develop strange fixations, spending decades arranging and rearranging their library according to increasingly esoteric organizational schemes that make sense only to them. Another might begin conversations with entities that no one else can perceive, arguing philosophy with imagined interlocutors, or consulting invisible advisors before making decisions. This madness does not necessarily impair magical ability. A lich can be completely insane by conventional standards, while still casting spells flawlessly and maintaining complex enchantments. The magical knowledge and capabilities that define lichdom exist independent of sanity, rooted in practiced technique and accumulated understanding rather than clear thinking or rational judgment. This creates the unsettling possibility of mad demi-liches, commanding power sufficient to reshape reality. Their goals incomprehensible to mortal or even undead observers. Yet their methods perfectly sound from a magical perspective. The question of purpose becomes increasingly critical as liches age. What drives them forward after centuries of existence? The initial goals that motivated their transformation, completing specific research, achieving certain magical accomplishments, accumulating particular knowledge, these get fulfilled or abandoned as time renders them irrelevant. New purposes must emerge to replace them, or the lich risks falling into a state of purposeless existence, aware and active, but without direction or motivation beyond simple continuation. Some liches develop grand projects that span millennia, enterprises so vast and complex that only immortal beings could conceive and execute them. Because they are immortal, they often have plans hatched that may take entire thousands of lifetimes to unfold. Their plans shape the very history around them. One might construct elaborate dungeon complexes like a Sorcerers' tomb of horrors, an architectural and magical achievement requiring centuries of planning and implementation. Others might set themselves the goal of collecting every spell ever created, or documenting the complete history of a particular region across its entire existence, or breeding a new form of magical creature through careful genetic manipulation, spanning thousands of generations. These projects provide structure and meaning, justifying continued existence through pursuit of objectives that dwarf mortal ambitions. The motivations for pursuing such goals vary considerably. World domination, apotheosis, long-term attempts to defeat a similarly immortal enemy, such as a rival lich, dragon, or deity. Long-term pursuit of an ideology, discovery of ancient secrets, re-establishing an ancient people lost to time, desperate avoidance of death at all costs, or widespread destruction. Some liches use their immortality to influence both their family and their rivals from the shadows, so only they and their descendants can benefit. Others focus on pure magical research, seeking to become gods or rulers of entire realms through accumulation of forbidden knowledge. Other liches find purpose in opposition and conflict. They set themselves against specific enemies or rival factions, engaging in struggles that span centuries. A lich might dedicate their existence to opposing a particular deity, working to undermine that god's worship and influence across multiple worlds and planes. Another might focus on destroying a specific organization or bloodline, pursuing vengeance with patience that outlasts their target's entire civilizations. Still others engage in eternal contests with fellow liches, games of strategy and power that continue across ages, with neither participant achieving final victory or accepting defeat. The practical advantages of lichdom for these long-term purposes extend beyond simple immortality. A lich can be in motion, researching 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, stopping only to feed a few souls to its phylactery. They possess undead immunities, including immunity to poison, disease, and many conditions that affect the living. Their spellcasting abilities remain intact or even enhanced. All the skills and knowledge one possessed in life, and an eternity to grow them, to gain more and more power. As long as the phylactery remains intact, a lich will remain immortal. The relationship between liches and the passage of time itself becomes increasingly distorted as centuries accumulate. Events that mortals consider ancient history represent personal memory for sufficiently old liches. They remember empires that current scholars know only through archaeological fragments. They witnessed magical catastrophes that shaped the world's current configuration. They knew personally individuals who have become legendary figures in modern times. This perspective alters how they evaluate current events, seeing patterns and connections invisible to those working with shorter timescales. A political development that seems revolutionary to mortals might appear as simple repetition of cycles the lich has observed multiple times previously. Yet this long perspective brings its own form of alienation. The lich becomes increasingly disconnected from the immediate concerns that drive living beings, viewing even major events as temporary fluctuations in patterns that will ultimately repeat or reverse. This could lead to a state where the lich cares little about the outcome of a war, when both sides will likely be gone within a century, or sees little point in preventing a catastrophe when similar disasters have occurred regularly throughout history, and the world has always recovered. This detachment can render even powerful liches ineffective at influencing contemporary events. Their actions coming too late or addressing the wrong aspects because they fail to recognize what makes the current situation unique. The legacy that liches leave upon the world extends beyond their personal actions to influence magical development and political structures across civilizations. Every spell they create or refine potentially enters broader circulation, affecting how subsequent generations of wizards approach magic. Every artifact they craft might be discovered and utilized centuries after their creation. Every tome they write could become foundational text for future schools of magical thought. The accumulated influence of undead sorcerers across history has shaped magical practice itself, making it impossible to separate what living wizards know from what liches taught them directly or indirectly. Political influence follows similar patterns of extended impact. Nations that Tam rules, or has ruled, retain the structures he established long after his potential destruction. Organizations that liches found continue operating according to principles set by their immortal creators. Even failed lich schemes leave lasting effects. The responses to their actions creating institutions, traditions, and attitudes that persist for generations. The world of the living exists partially as reaction to and product of undead machinations, shaped by centuries of lich involvement in mortal affairs. The question of whether lichdom represents wisdom or folly remains ultimately unanswerable, dependent on values and priorities that vary between individuals. From one perspective, the achievement of immortality through one's own power, the preservation of knowledge across ages, the ability to pursue understanding without limit. These represent the highest aspirations of magical scholarship fulfilled. The lich has conquered death itself and achieved what living beings can only dream about: unlimited time to learn and grow and accomplish works that dwarf mortal achievements. As true immortality and true power, lichdom offers an eternity to accumulate skills, knowledge, and magical capabilities. From another perspective, lichdom represents the ultimate tragedy, the sacrifice of everything that makes life meaningful in pursuit of mere continuation. The lich has traded joy, love, beauty, connection, and genuine emotion for cold intellectual existence in a decaying shell. Its quest for immortality comes at the cost of its humanity, and its soul, trapped in a phylactery, forever ties it to the world of the living, making it a being of relentless ambition, but also profound isolation. They persist, but do not truly live. Accumulating knowledge, they lack the emotional capacity to appreciate fully, achieving goals that bring diminishing satisfaction. continuing endlessly through sheer momentum, rather than actual desire for more existence. Perhaps the truth lies between these extremes, varying with each individual lich and their particular circumstances. Some might find genuine fulfillment in their undead existence, achieving purposes that justify the sacrifices made. Others might exist in states of quiet regret, unable to reverse their transformation, yet unwilling to seek final destruction. Still others might simply continue without evaluating whether their existence holds value, persisting because stopping would require more effort or decision-making than they can muster after centuries of gradual emotional decay. The libraries they maintain, the knowledge they preserve, the magical advances they achieve, all of this endures as testament to what lichdom makes possible. Yet the price paid in humanity, sanity, and genuine experience serves as warning about costs that cannot be calculated until too late. The Lich stands as both inspiration and cautionary tale, proof of magic's ultimate potential and reminder of the dangers inherent in pursuing power without wisdom, knowledge without understanding, immortality without considering what makes continued existence worthwhile. Until next time, may your own pursuits of knowledge be tempered with wisdom, and may you never face the choice between mortality and the eternal twilight existence of the Lich.